There we go. All right, welcome everyone. My name is Allie Ryan Hansen. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Communications Manager for the Oregon Department of State Lands and your moderator for tonight's information session. It is exciting to see all of you joining us tonight to learn about DSL's budget and legislative concept ideas. I'm going to quickly review our agenda and then introduce the DSL team who will be presenting. Oops. And in order for you guys to see this, I need to share it. Okay. Pardon my technical difficulties. Okay. Everybody can all see that? If I can get thumbs upses. That's an interesting phrase to pluralize. So let's just quickly take a look at the agenda. First, Director Vicki Walker. Vicki, can you give the folks a wave? She's going to officially welcome you and talk a bit about DSL's work and strategic goals. Then Deputy Director Jean Straight is going to be walking you through the department's budget asks. And after that, Malia Masiba, who's our Government and Legislative Affairs Coordinator and is now waving, will review a legislative concept the department is working on, as well as the budget and legislative process. After that, we'll spend the rest of the evening hearing your questions and thoughts. I am going to ask folks to hold questions until after the presentations, but you can put them in the chat at any time. You can raise your hand anytime, and I'll read them aloud and call on you when it's discussion time. One bit of housekeeping, please do remember to keep your mics muted so we can avoid background noise. And with that, Director Walker, please begin.
Let me unmute myself. Oh, I'm unmuted already.
You're unmuted already. You got it.
All right. Well, you may hear my dog bark on occasion. We just arrived here at our place at the coast for my birthday weekend. So thank you, Peggy. So it's good to be with you tonight. I see Peggy Lynch is joining us and Fergus and others that I don't know, but I'm happy to meet. I really want to thank you for taking time to spend time with us this evening to learn more about our budget. I appreciate your interest in our work for Oregon and the priorities that we are considering asking the legislature for to support this coming session. Of course, that won't happen until next year, which seems a long ways off, but we're preparing those legislative asks now. Jean and Malia will provide an overview of our budget priorities and legislative concepts shortly, but I first wanted to talk a bit about how DSL's asks connect with our mission and strategic goals, which we've been working on for the past 2 years to put in place. All of the proposals we're presenting to you tonight directly support the department's mission, and that is proudly displayed on the screen here. And these were all developed specifically to make progress on our 4 overarching goals to our strategic plan. We, first of all, strive to provide exceptional service to all Oregonians, and Allie has put those goals on the screen, all Oregonians who benefit from the department's stewardship of natural resources and the Common School Fund, as well as the people who apply for permits through.
Apologies, my connection dropped. Let's try this again.
So did mine.
4th priority of our overarching goals, and it's to make DSL a great place to work. Hiring and retaining excellent employees gives us the best shot at attaining every other goal that we have for ourselves, as well as serving Oregonians. We're proud of the work we do for Oregon's Common School Fund and natural resources, while also providing exceptional experiences for both our employees and our customers. And that's, of course, every Oregonian. The budget policy packages and the legislative concept, we only have one this year, you'll hear about tonight, all contribute to one or more of these strategic goals. I know some of you joining us this evening have a strong working understanding of the legislative schedule. Peggy would have to tell you how many years she's been involved in the legislative process, but it's been too many to count. But I do, for those of you who aren't as familiar, the legislative budget development process has a very long timeline. It's important to know the discussions we're having this evening are for a budget that won't take effect until July 2023, nearly a year away. Most of Oregon's agencies are having similar budget and legislative concept sharing meetings right now, as all agencies are preparing to submit their agency budget requests to the governor's office at the end of the summer. Now, I know that you know that we're going to have a new governor in the fall. The November election will see who that new governor will be. And that new governor will be putting out their budget as soon as they can for legislative consideration. But in the meantime, this governor is still actively busy, and we must follow all the rules that she sets forth to get the information so that everyone can be prepared to move forward. The next legislative session will begin in late January 2023. Then over the course of the 5-month session, your representatives and senators will consider all of the budget requests brought before them from state agencies via the governor, as well as a myriad of other public and legislative requests to determine the final state budget for the 23-25 biennium. That budget then will begin in July of 2023 and go through June of 2025. I think it's helpful for all of us to keep in mind this timeline as we talk about the department's priorities and legislative goals this evening. It's a long ways off, but not really. And we have an incredible amount of work ahead of us, particularly as it relates to our legislative concept that Malia will talk to you about in a little bit. I want to again thank you for joining our conversation to learn about and help us strengthen DSL's legislative requests and priorities. I'm now going to turn it over to Jean Straight. Jean is the department's Deputy Director for Administration, and that includes the development of our budget. And she'll share our policy option packages, or POPs, as they're known in the vernacular. And she'll then be followed by Malia Masiba, our legislative coordinator, who will review our legislative concepts. So Jean, I'm going to turn it over to you.
I remember just in time. Thank you, Director Walker, and welcome everyone. I appreciate you being here tonight to learn more about our policy option packages the department has drafted. These POPs are developed to significantly advance the strategic goals Vicki outlined and really emphasize meaningful and measurable benefits to Oregon. So you will see dollar amounts in these slides, but I want you to know that we are still in development of these dollar amounts. So these are what we're estimating right now, but we will be finalizing those dollars in the next couple of months. So first, exceptional services. The POPs are proposed to enhance services to the public and the people who do business with DSL, with an emphasis on ensuring information and services are more accessible and accountable. The first two POPs are related. The Modern Permitting and Information System project, which will be completed with the funds requested, is Package 106. It creates an easy-to-use online portal for applying for permits, assessing project documents, paying fees, and more. The powerful back-end database will support enhanced oversight of school lands, wetlands, and waterway permits, revenues, and more. The second package, using data to improve service and accountability, adds a business analyst position to ensure DSL fully realizes the benefits of the new information system by increasing use of data to improve services and report to the public on performance. Next, a package to enhance our visitor experience at South Slough Reserve, which I'm sure if you look, many of you recognize the picture in the slide, that is our South Slough. This package will help Oregonians explore South Slough Reserve trails, waterways, and more by adding a seasonal park ranger and creating a full-time position to create maps and oversee geographic information. So just a quick clarification on funding sources and POP numbers. Most of DSL's funding is other funds generated by the agency's program activities and Common School Fund investment returns. When the funding source noted is federal funds, that indicates grants or other resources from federal agencies are funding the proposed packages. The POP numbers generally indicate the relative package priority, but with the understanding that when DSL proposes POPs, all are essential to our work in Oregon. Next are supporting schools. These POPs are, there we go. These POPs are proposed to increase revenue to the Common School Fund with an emphasis on seeking innovative solutions and securing alternative funding for projects that advance strategic goals. These POPs include an Elliott State Forest Research Forest Transition Package, which continues contracted forest maintenance and fire protection services and project management staffing. These continued services and staffing is needed while DSL and partners complete required work to transition the Elliott from a Common School Fund asset to a research forest overseen by the new independent agency, the Elliott State Research Forest Authority, that was created during the 2022 legislative session. The department is also proposing 3 packages that carry forward unspent grant funds to support completion of removal fill program projects and a restroom renovation at South Slough Reserve, as well as funds allocated by the legislature to the Oregon Ocean Science Trust to be awarded as ocean research grants. We are also proposing Thriving Oregon packages that will support communities and build a natural resource legacy for our state, with particular emphasis on increasing oversight to ensure effective stewardship of wetlands and waterways and adding resources to meaningfully engage and partner with communities. These POPs include 2 packages for the Portland Harper Superfund site. Package 101 provides legal and environmental expertise to protect the state's interest in the site cleanup and includes DOJ cost, consulting cost, and a limited duration natural resource specialist position. Package 102 supports the direct cleanup work by continuing funding for expenses like contracted professional services. The proposed stewardship of wetlands and waterways package ensures ongoing expertise in removal fill permitting, waterway leasing, and oversight of authorized permits and uses, and also supports improving opportunities for public participation and engagement. The positions proposed in this package will increase removal fill law expertise and oversight, increase oversight of permitted waterway uses, and enhance services in the Portland metro area, which has a high volume of waterway use, and lead DSL's work in examining undersea cable permitting processes as directed by House Bill 2603 in the 2021 legislative session. The department is also proposing an engagement position to ensure meaningful, inclusive opportunities for engagement with the public, communities, and stakeholders across all DSL programs. The final Thriving Oregon package continues funding for community-led projects to enhance public waterways. The Submerged Lands Enhancement Fund was established by the Oregon legislature and provides grants to local communities and organizations for projects that improve publicly owned waterways. Last, but certainly not least, is a proposed Great Workplace POP, which emphasized supporting Team DSL by reclassifying 4 positions where the job classification did not match the work actually being done. This is a technical fix that needs to be done during the budget process. The estimated cost of the package is indeed $30. Yes, you're reading that right. It wasn't a typo. It's a small cost for an important fix that helps those positions provide effective services and helps us retain employees by aligning their work with the appropriate classification. And that completes our policy package review. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Jean. We'll now go to Malia, who's going to provide an overview of the department's legislative concept.
Thanks, Allie and Jean. So similar to the POPs, the legislative concept, singular, is in proposal form right now. DSL, like many other state agencies, as the director noted earlier, has been building and shaping our legislative concept for several months now. Ultimately, the purpose of the legislative request is to shift our Aquatic Resources Management Division, where the Removal Fill Program and the Waterway Uses Program are housed, to move toward a more sustainable funding structure. Tonight is the first of many conversations the department will have with stakeholders, other agencies, and the public over the course of the next 6 months, and even leading into the session once it starts in 2023. So we'll continue to fine tune this request so that it's reflective of the experiences that our many partners who are impacted by wetland development, abandoned and derelict vessels, waterway uses in Oregon, and the widespread need for a comprehensive response to long-term camping on state grounds. DSL's legislative concept, as you can see, has two elements which will work together in conjunction with some other efforts within the department to increase removal fill and waterway use revenues in order to reduce the overall reliance on the Common School Fund. The two elements are a request to move removal fill fee setting authority from statute into DSL rule. This will allow the department to implement a tiered fee structure, allowing for the cost of the application and the review process to be proportionate to the size of the project or the amount of the removal or fill that's being considered. Secondly, DSL is requesting, in certain circumstances, that our requirements to store and manage public property obtained in cleanups performed on state lands be adjusted. Currently, when DSL performs cleanups on ADVs or encampments on state lands, DSL staff are required to collect and store items that are determined to be personal property for 2 years. In 2011, the Department of Transportation asked the legislature for an exception to this requirement under very certain circumstances when the state was performing noticed cleanup actions on state-owned lands. So DSL is asking for a very similar exception that will be applied only in the cases when the department is performing a publicly noticed cleanup to address ADVs and or long-term camping on state lands. So these two pieces comprise our single legislative concept, which will continue to develop with input from a long list of stakeholders and interested parties. But for the development process, I did want to circle back to the timeline that Director Walker touched on earlier this hour, and give you an even clearer expectation of what the legislative and budget development process looks like between tonight and the legislative session in 2023. So as Director Walker mentioned, you may be hearing from or have already heard from other state agencies at this time, because we're all working on developing initial legislative concepts and budget priorities. June 3rd, which is only a little over a week away, is the official deadline for agencies to submit legislative concept requests. And then our budget will formally be submitted in August. After June is when state agencies will begin working with Legislative Council to draft language for our bills. So that will happen kind of between July through October. During this time, DSL is going to be working to meet with and talk with as many of our stakeholders as possible and draft these bills as collaboratively as possible. September is when we'll start to see the chute begin to narrow for agency draft concepts, with September 30th being the final day that agencies can request amendments to their bill drafts. Our goal is to have our draft be as pragmatic and effective as possible and be something that our partners and other stakeholders can support as broadly as possible. At the end of October, Legislative Council will stop drafting agency bills. This is because, as many of you know, there's a very consequential election the beginning of November, after which Legislative Council will turn their attention fully to the landslide of legislative requests that will be piling in on them from recently re-elected or newly elected officials, including a new governor. Agencies are required to submit final versions of our bills. the fiscal impact statements for those bills and one-pagers to the governor's office and DAS by November 16th, which is a little less than a month ahead of the pre-session filing deadline, which this year falls on December 9th. And traditionally, agency bills are pre-session filed. So by December 9th, we will have a bill in the hopper. And as an aside, I'll add that this year's budget release is going to have a slightly different timeline. After December 9th, all of the attention is really going to turn to the governor's recommended budget release, which we typically see around that time. However, this year, with a true administrative changeover happening in our highest office, which we haven't had for a couple of terms now, the incoming governor will have an expanded timeline to release their recommended budget. So we may not see that until the session has already begun. The late release of a governor's recommended budget can result in a little bit more of a scramble for agencies and other parties to lobby for their budget requests. So it's even more important than usual to be fully prepared with strong support of our priorities and asks. And that's why we're thankful that you're here with us tonight to begin this conversation. And I'm going to turn it over to Allie so we can start some Q&A.
Sorry, my young associate has just returned home and is demanding to have her nails painted, which I think my husband's going to do. Thank you, Malia and Jean and Vicki. We now have time for questions and discussion. If you'd like to ask a question or if you have a thought, please either put it in the chat or raise your hand. The chat feature is located down at the bottom. It's a little bubble, and then the raise hand feature is under reactions. If you click on reactions, you can just raise your hand, or if you're joining us on the phone, which I don't think anybody is, it's *9 to raise your hand. I am going to ask questions in the order they're submitted, or call on folks in the order they raise their hand. I'll alternate between chat questions and hand raising. And I just want to note that we want to make sure we hear from everybody tonight. We've got a nice number of people and a lot of time, so I think that we probably will, but if you've got a lot of questions, please ask them one at a time or a couple at a time so we can make sure that we hear from everybody. And then I also just want to remind you, I know you all will, to just be respectful of each other and of DSL staff. Stay on mute if you're not speaking. Please don't interrupt each other, even if you're really, really excited to talk or contribute a thought. And then just my usual reminder of criticism being a really healthy part of public dialogue, but just direct any criticisms you have at ideas and not people. With that, Peggy Lynch, I see your hand up. Please go ahead and unmute and introduce yourself and ask your question or give us your thoughts.
Hello, everybody. Peggy Lynch, League of Women Voters of Oregon. And Director Walker, was it 2009 that you were co-chair of the Ways and Means Natural Resources Subcommittee? So I have been doing this at least that long. I thank you for this. I hope that these documents are somewhere available. And good job on the way you have presented them in a positive manner. Some of the other agencies have not done as good a job of selling their POPs. They explain them technically, but this is a really good job of selling them. So hats off. The one issue I wanted to make sure I brought up right now is that I also serve on the DLCD Housing Capacity Work Group. And that work group is supposed to be working on how can we make sure that there is enough land and enough housing units for everybody in all price ranges. And part of that discussion means the dealing with wetlands, because we know particularly in the Mid-Willamette Valley that we have not only with our industrial lands, but frankly with others, that we have wetlands that are being counted as buildable lands, but ought not to be. And so one of the discussions we're having, and I just want to give you a heads up about it, is whether or not, and an ask through this work group, that DSL do more work around mapping wetlands to help the cities know which lands to prepare for wetlands and how to subtract those from the buildable lands inventory. So I'll have other comments, but I'll let other people talk. I just wanted to make sure I got those out right away. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Peggy. I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat, and I'm not seeing any other hands raised. Does anybody else have a question, a thought? We would love to hear from folks tonight. Vicki, you are still muted.
Darn it, you'd think we'd figure it out by now. But while we're waiting for others to maybe think about a question, I wanted to respond to Peggy about the wetland mapping. We're doing a lot of work in that regard because of that very reason. A lot of communities want to know what land is buildable, how can they expand. We've got a shortage of affordable housing in many of our communities. So we're working quite readily on that. We have some EPA grants in place we've been doing some stuff with, but I'll make a note and have Bill Ryan, our deputy, our other deputy, send you some information about what we're doing on that. Dana Hicks is actually our manager that oversees that program.
So the DLCD staffer is Sean Edgings. And so you might make a note of that. And because this will come up along with the need for all the infrastructure that we need. So thank you.
Okay.
Yeah,
great.
Peggy, Vicki, do you mind if I also respond to Peggy?
No,
Peggy, I was going to send you a message, but I'll just jump in here. It looks like we have the time. During this last short session, as much as I was able to, I was a little preoccupied with another bill during February, but I was very much trying to track, the state's responsiveness right now to the housing shortage, because I understand that the work that we do is going to coincide with the planning of what the state decides to do and how we make more housing available safely and quickly, for Oregonians. So I know that part of what we need to do is be plugging in some more to some of these housing work group conversations. That's something that's been on my list. I met with Emma Land over at DLCD a week or two ago, but I know that these are conversations that you're pretty engaged in. And so please feel free, if there's a work group or a meeting or something that comes up, feel free to pass my name along as well as a contact for folks who might want to engage with DSL, because that's something that I know that we'll be doing over the next year or so, is that engagement. So anything you want to throw my way and help out there, I would appreciate.
So this is a very short-term project. We have to be done, I think, by October or something. Yeah. It relates to the regional housing needs analysis work. And so there are meetings. I've forgotten when our next one is. We just finished one. If in fact, and I know some of the other agencies, DEQ, for instance, is an ex officio member of this group, had not really thought about DSL until we had this conversation 2 days ago.
Okay.
Yeah, it sounds like we should be a member of that group. So Malia and I will follow up on that. Thank you, Peggy.
Okay, we've got plenty of time for thoughts, questions.
So I'm going to keep talking until somebody else raises their hand. And when they do, I will shut up.
We would expect nothing less of you, Peggy.
Well, I want to use this time. You're all here, and I really appreciate the fact that you're all here. So you already know that the League is very interested in the fee structure change, and I will be interested. I'm curious as to why it's going to be one bill, one LC. I sort of heard what you said, but I wonder if that's really the best structure because I don't want to lose getting the fee structure changed. So just to comment that is a concern, although I also understand the issue about the personal property issues and wanting to take care of that. We're certainly supportive of any IT increases to make sure that you're doing a good job of permitting and applications. That does something positive for both the applicant and for the general public, because we then have a better access to what it is that you're doing or what somebody is proposing. So that has real positive things. And you know, anything having to do with the South Slough, we're right there. Laughingly. And of course, the Elliott State Forest, as you move forward with the new research forest, we're going to want to make sure that we follow that process and make sure that it's positive. The Superfund site we have always supported, and I'll be interested to learn more at another time about your POP 104 and the increase in wetlands work. And I think that's all of them that I listed. So,
well, I'd love to just start with the first one that you listed there about, you know, why a single LC? Because I think we came to that, you know, in a very logical way. So the larger conversation that's been happening at the department for the last couple of years is, you know, Peggy, you've been hearing us talk about a sustainable funding model for the ARM. And so for those of you, you know, who are on, who might not be as familiar, the ARM is our Aquatic Resource Management Division. So that division houses the removal fill program, which protects Oregon wetlands. And then it also houses our waterway uses program. And so that's where if you need a lease for a dock or something along those lines, any kind of use on the water or for the submerged land underneath the water, that goes through our waterway uses, or sometimes it's called a proprietary program. Those two programs together make up that division. And what we are trying to do is ensure that the programs independently and the division as a whole become financially self-funding. It's a little up and down from year to year. However, when you begin to factor in the costs of abandoned and derelict vessels, that is really an issue that has just really exploded across the state in the last 5 to 10 years. And it's an issue that the state doesn't have a program for. There's no abandoned and derelict vessel program in any agency in Oregon. Because of our proprietary rights to the waterways in Oregon, we often become responsible for the cleanup and removal of abandoned and derelict vessels. Related to that issue, we have also seen a significant increase in camping on state lands, long-term camping on state lands. And, you know, in the past, we haven't had to have such a consistent, constant, widespread response to that. But as camping has grown, our response to camping, our responsibility to both the campers and the land has continued to increase. And so those costs start showing up in that waterway uses program, where we really don't have a budget to respond to them, but we do have a responsibility to respond to them. So with abandoned and derelict vessels and the long-term camping that's really developed over the past couple of years, now you see those budget numbers for those two programs kind of go from up and down to just being blown entirely off the map when you can't factor in things like, you know, Peggy, you'll remember the Gobel cleanup was a $12.2 million cleanup, right? So the larger conversation has been, how do we make these two programs and this division as a whole financially viable in the future, so that every time we go over budget there for those issues, it's the earned interest from the Common School Fund that ends up subsidizing that work. And it's important work. It does have to be done, but we don't have direction or policy guidance or response about whether that work should be subsidized by the Common School Fund. And so we are looking to move that work off of the Common School Fund's books, essentially, so that those programs can pay for themselves. The two pieces in the LC, you'll notice there's one piece that directly addresses the removal fill program, and then one piece that directly addresses the waterway uses program, because we do want to illustrate that we need both of those programs to be financially viable for themselves, and we need changes in both of those programs in order for that to happen. But the larger issue is financial sustainability for that division. So our ask, the way that it's framed in our mind as we've talked about it, is the legislative request is for financial sustainability for that ARM division. And so that's how those two ended up in a single LC. And I can, it hadn't really been brought to my attention, or no one has questioned that until now. And it's a good question. It's a good point. At this point, I feel comfortable with those being in a single LC, knowing the process that bills can go through a legislative session and, changes that can be made. And again, we're at the beginning of having these conversations with folks like you and everyone else. So, we've submitted our legislative request, but I don't think by any means we have final bill draft language at this point. So
the question is then, is that fee structure going to include a different and new fee structure related to helping to support the abandoned and derelict vessels? Because if that's not the case, then I certainly think that the removal fill permittees are not going to be interested in carrying the $12 million global type event on their backs. So
no, that's good. That's, good feedback, but no, that's not the intention in altering the removal fee program to create revenue for abandoned and derelict vessels. That is fees that would be proportionate to the work that's done under removal fill work, so that the removal fill program is just funding itself, which it just isn't doing at this point. And that's not because of abandoned and derelict vessels.
Right, and I know that, and the league has already testified in front of the state land board in favor of increasing the fees on one. But you haven't explained to me how you're going to create money that's not out of the common school fund for a global, for instance.
Yeah, and we are open to ideas for that. I think that one of the things we realize right now is that, number one, those fees get very high very quickly, and they're very sporadic. They're hard to predict. And we talk about this often amongst ourselves with our partners over at OSMB, with the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office, with Metro. We talk about, like, where does a source of funds come from that's a fair, appropriate funding source that will also raise enough revenue to cover a $12 million cleanup or a $3 million cleanup. And I don't know anyone that has a comprehensive answer for that yet. I know it's something that we're all continuing to work toward, but for DSL, under the umbrella of trying to create a sustainable ARM program, we realize that ADVs are a big piece of that, but there's many pieces. And so the two pieces in the legislation for 2023 are trying to target, more direct. I don't really like to use the phrase, maybe, the lower hanging fruit here, but these are narrow, specific requests that we can put forward and say, changing this makes removal fill, self-funded. Changing the personal property holding requirement does lower the cost for the state when we do those cleanups for ADVs and long-term camping. It also increases the state's protection just against liability when we're managing other folks' personal property. That's the other important piece for the personal property thing. And so, Peggy, you make a good point that these two pieces don't necessarily create funding to address ADVs, but they're part of the larger conversation of getting the ARM to be self-funding.
Peggy, let me mute myself again. There we go. Yeah, let me respond a little bit to the ADV problem. That is a multifaceted issue, as you well know, and it's not just a money problem. It is a port problem. It is a owner of a vessel that sells it for $1 or cheaper when they don't want it anymore, knowing that it's easier to sell it to someone for a few bucks and unload it that way. So actually today there was an article about the Newport Clean Marinas program. They partnered with NOAA and got some funding to take 12 abandoned vessels out of their South Beach Marina. And they got a contract to take them apart and get rid of them. And I will tell you also, the Coos Bay port is now going to require insurance on vessels that moor in their port. And all of this is going to be important for us to manage this abandoned and derelict vessel problem. If I could get the federal government, the GSA, to stop selling those World War II vessels to people, that's a big solution to our problem as well. And I'll tell you right now, we're working with Metro. Metro got a grant. They got some money actually from the legislature. And they're going to put in $2 million to help us remove 2 large vessels in the Portland area. And if it goes over 2 million, we'll end up contracting to pay for the rest of that, because if they didn't pay that 2 million, we'd be paying all of it. So our job is to try to see how we can partner with our stakeholders to help us reduce these costs. And I quite frankly think this is a general fund issue. This shouldn't be the school kids of the state of Oregon paying to remove these vessels. And of course, as you know, once they sink, that becomes sometimes 2-3 times the cost to retrieve them from under the water. We have a lot of steps we have to go through. We have to first try to find the person who owns it if they're not living on it. Then we have to serve notice. We have to go through all kinds of legal machinations. And it takes a lot of time and a lot of money. And then when we finally get the opportunity to take the boat, seize the boat, and do something with it, we've got to find a contractor that's willing to take it and break it down and dispose of it. It is a significant problem that has grown in my tenure at the agency. And the only nice thing about this is that it's become a problem that the legislature finally understands, because it's happening in several districts and not just the Portland area. So I think there's finally some feeling that we need to do something here, and that it really shouldn't just be coming out of the money that goes to the school kids. You know, the school kids could send in all their pennies like they did to replate the gold man on top of the statue years ago. Well, and did you do that as well? I am confident that I did that when I was a school kid, because I'm now 66, and that happened a long time ago. But well, I'm not quite 66. I got to wait till Sunday. But anyway, there's more interest in solving the problem. We were part of a blue ribbon panel discussion. It was a commission that met for several months with British Columbia, Alaska, and many of the coastal states, because we are all experiencing this problem, and came up with a lot of ideas. One of the other things that we are doing as well is we're not renewing marina leases unless they require insurance. Now, we can't do that until the lease is up, and those leases are for 15 years. But, it's one way for us to make sure the marinas are doing their part, because they need to do their part as well.
So I just think that that Malia, I think your verbiage about explaining the two together and how the arm is going to then be more self-supporting, I think is not really true, and ought to be. You need to look at your rephrasing of that discussion. I understand putting the two concepts together. I understand what you're saying, but that does not help fund the derelict and abandoned vessel issue. So thank you. And thank you, Vicki. I appreciate
Yeah, I appreciate the feedback on that. And as you know, the fees for the removal fill program, because you've testified about this before in front of the land board, are not meeting their expectations. For instance, the Jordan Cove natural gas pipeline, 15 years our staff worked on that, over 15 years, and all they did was pay one fee, $1,250. That was ridiculous. So, you know, that we don't get a lot of cases like that, but there are removal fill cases that are more complex than others, which is why we're looking for a structured fee. So everyone's not paying for the high-end user, and they're just paying for what they need. All right, do we have any more?
Oh, Vicki, you're muted again, but I think you're asking if we have any more folks who want to weigh in, folks who want to ask questions. I'm glad. It's nice to have the space to have a conversation about issues, especially when it's as complex a problem and as big a problem as finding sustainable funding. Solving the ARM funding issue and talking about abandoned derelict vessels and talking about camping along waterways. Because that's a big problem that's made up of a lot of smaller problems. And so I think being collaborative and putting our heads together and having these conversations about how to chip away at it is really important. And I'm really glad that we got to do that tonight. But I do want to make space for folks to ask other questions or to provide other thoughts while we are here. So if anybody has questions, thoughts, please feel free to raise your hand or drop a question in the chat. David, you're unmuted, and I'm wondering. Oh,
well, can you hear me?
Yep, we can.
You know, you're missing a big bunch of funding on your recreation. You could be harvesting 40 million board feet in the Elliott Forest and funding a lot of this recreation, and that's the main comment. And we're still pursuing all this stuff, and the children didn't get their fair share. Nothing I can do about it, but that's where I'm at. But anyway, you need to do more recreation in the Elliott Forest, and they need to spend a little bit more money on the recreation sites. Southwestern has picked out some of that stuff it's all on the internet, went to OSU and so forth. I hope somebody addresses this. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Appreciate that.
You know, I got in here late, so I'm not quite sure what I just got in here late, so I'm out of order. I don't know what I'm doing, but I just got back with our field trip with Southwestern. We went to the Golden Silver Falls and had a good time today. Thank you.
All right. Well, we appreciate you coming back and joining this meeting and that thoughtful comment as well. And we'll make sure to send you, I put in the chat, we're going to post the PowerPoint that was shared tonight and the recording of this video on our website and to our YouTube. And David, one of us will make sure that you get that so you're all caught up with what you missed.
I wanted to comment on one more thing. I wanted to say that your contractor's doing a real good job on the maintenance in the Elliott, and we just wanted to thank him for that and let you know he is doing a good job. Thank you.
Thank you for saying that. We'll pass that along to the folks at Titan Kelly. I'm sure they'll be
thrilled
to get that compliment.
Yeah, I appreciate, David, that when you find one of the roads that needs some tenderness, tender loving care, that you let Mark at Titan Kelly know, and they're usually on it right away.
Well, we got the road goes to Elkhorn. It's 8100. It needs to have more care, and I believe Mark is going to do something this year, but he needs funding to get a little more rock on it. And needs to crown it, and it's got quite a bit of stuff in the ditch line and so forth. And he's working on it now, but we'll see how it goes. I kind of keep an eye on it. But anyway, I've been working with Mark. He's a good guy and does a good job for you. Mark Huff. Thank you. I'll get off here, Ricky.
Thank
I don't
you,
know how
David.
to get off. I guess slam.
So, David, I just want to say thank you for all that you are doing on behalf of the Elliott. And the league is also very interested in OSU doing a good job in creating some more recreation opportunities on the Elliott. So it's good to hear from you.
The governor asked for somebody to do that, and I've tried to do it. I'm not very good at it, but that's what I try to do what she asked. And I know that you people are wanting to do something. And I know a lot about the fire history. OSU is kind of ignoring me. I wish they would talk to me more about the fire history. I could tie a lot of that in with them better because I know that quite well and so forth. And I knew Jerry Phillips better than most people, and he spent a lot of time with him the last few years. He's been working with Southwestern with me and Bob on this too. So I just wish OSU would consider some of the fire history that I know. I'm disappointed. About all I can say about it. Running around taking chops out of snags, I could help them do that or show them where some of them are at least. But just when we went to the Golden Silver Falls today, the trees standing there were 250 some years old. They grew after the 1760 forest fire that burnt all southwestern Oregon. The same fire that burnt Elkhorn, and the snags that were there when my grandparents homesteaded there are those trees that are over Golden Silver Falls and Jerry's Reserve also. That's that age. There's a lot of stories about carbon you could learn from this stuff if they just talk to me. And then the trees that are standing are about 150 years old. They grew up after the 1879 fire, and I've documented that, and I kind of want to ignore that also. And I'd just like to be able to talk to people about that a little bit. And I could help them, I think, if they'd listen. I'm not trying to tell them what to do. I'd like to let them know what I know.
We sure appreciate that, David. Thank you for joining us.
Just like Jerry, this has been my life story, and Jerry and I agree on everything on this. We were close friends, and it's kind of disheartening when he passed away, but he was with his family and he's having a good time, so it was no pain. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I don't know how to get off here, but I'm trying.
I can go ahead and I'll go ahead and mute you. I can do it on my end. Oops. There we go. Okay. Well, we sure do appreciate everybody joining us tonight. I'm not seeing any other questions or hands up. So I think it might be time for us to wrap up. Before I turn it back over to Vicki to bring us home with some closing thoughts, I just want to underline something that both she and Malia mentioned earlier tonight, which is we are early in this process. So hearing from folks now and having you join us now is really important because it helps us shape and refine what we're proposing for budget for our legislative concepts. But this is not going to be the last time you're hearing from us about any of this or the last opportunity to weigh in. There's so many opportunities ahead. So just make sure that you're signed up for DSL email updates, which is on our website under newsroom, so you can keep informed. And I'll put that on the screen in a minute as I turn it back over to Director Walker for her closing thoughts.
So before she closes, there are 4 people here that I don't recognize, and I just was hoping that maybe they would say something about why they're here and why they care about DSL. Sorry.
Folks, you certainly don't have to. I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but Peggy makes a good point, which if folks would like to take off their cameras and introduce themselves and talk with us a little, that sure would be wonderful. I know a couple of the folks on the line tonight are DSL staff, but Victoria, you turned on your camera very quickly. So would you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, can everyone hear me okay? Okay. I'm Victoria Frankeny. I'm actually the one of the newest hires at Tualatin Riverkeepers, the riverkeeper and staff attorney. And we've done like a bunch of comments on permit applications to DSL regarding fill removal. So I just wanted to sort of get some background, some information, get an idea of what you guys were looking to include in your budget proposal. So yeah, it's nice meeting everybody.
Nice meeting you. Thank you.
Thank you, Peggy, for being forward. I appreciate it. Maddie.
I think Joseph turned on their camera first, if that's the order, but if you don't mind me going, Joseph, since I'm already off mute. But hi, everyone, Maddie Doe. I'm an associate at Thorn Run Partners, just tracking general agency budgets on behalf of a couple clients. So nice to see you all. Thank you, Peggy, for kicking us off with this.
Welcome, Maddie. Joe, do you want to go?
Yeah, hi, I'm Joseph Flager. I'm the Finance and Budget Manager at the Department of State Lands. So I've been working closely with Jean on preparing all those POPs and things like that.
Thank you.
Michelle, I bet you could introduce yourself because you're new to DSL's budget.
Yeah, I'm Michelle Lisper. I'm with the Department of Administration. I'm the Chief Financial Office person representing and assisting DSL with their budget. And yes, I've been assigned new analyst for about the past.
Oh no, I'm not hearing you anymore. You don't look unmuted, but was it just me that Michelle stopped?
No, we lost her audio.
Yeah, you were assigned as a new analyst and then we saw your mouth moving, but no sound.
Yeah. Can you now?
Here we go. Yeah.
So I've been doing some field work with DSL and I am getting out in the field. So I get a better understanding from the ground up and helping them with their budget. So right now I'm their best friend, but when we get to ANREC, I'm probably going to be looked at as the enemy in the governor's budget.
No.
And we have another DSL staffer on the phone, on the line here, Dario Frazone. Dario, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Dario Frazone. Just off work, spending my free time coming to more DSL meetings because I love the mission and this stuff is also tangentially important to me as I'll be getting more colleagues or coworkers or having a easier, better time with my job supporting the mission of the agency, which I'm really proud to be a part of. So that's me.
Thanks, Dario.
What's the water body in the background there, Dario?
This one is Triangle Lake in Douglas County. It's from a site visit that I did last year. Part of my job as a proprietary coordinator is to conduct routine inspections on our waterway leases. Is a really important part of our work to, make sure that the uses in the state-owned waterways are in good condition and, safe and environmentally hopefully in good order as well. So, it's one of my favorite things to do as part of my work. And I always have some kind of state-owned waterway usually as a background that I've got going on.
Well, so that's the cool thing about these folks that work for us is they take some really awesome pictures and circulate them among staff who use them as their background. It's really beautiful.
You said Triangle Lake in Douglas County, not in Lane County?
Oh, it might be in Lane County. Sorry, I confused.
It's important because that's where I grew up.
Oh, yeah, sorry about that.
And when they had a resort, that was my first job as a teenager.
At Triangle Lake?
Absolutely gorgeous out there. I love Triangle Lake.
I remember the rock slides at Triangle Lake. Our senior sneak from Reedsport High School in 1974 is when we went to the rock slides and slid down them. That's what country kids do, rural kids do.
Well, if anybody's ever interested in going here, this is from a camping resort that they have on kind of like the southeast side of the lake. And I think it's available to, you can rent out the whole resort or whatever for your camping trip if you have a big group. So.
But they also have a really big problem with septic systems and whatever in the lake, and particularly now. And so that's a real concern. I just want to thank everybody else who spoke up when I opened my mouth and asked you to. It's nice to meet you, and I wanted to hear from each of you. So thank you.
It really is. And Peggy, I'm so glad that you did that, because it's just added a little bit of extra specialness to, I think, our conversation tonight. So that was wonderful. Vicki, would you?
Yeah, sure. I just have a few things to say. I want to thank everyone, of course, for joining us and for great questions and conversation, and especially a shout out to Peggy for asking you all to introduce yourself. I should have done that myself, but I'm glad I left it up to Peggy. We really appreciate your time and insights. It's helpful to us as we go forward drafting our budget and our legislative concept. And in fact, on that legislative concept, we'll be having stakeholder meetings starting, when are we starting those stakeholder meetings, Malia? Next month?
Well, as far as larger stakeholder meetings, we will start those after the Memorial Day holiday and then the Ledge Days. So later on into June. Yeah.
So we'll have, as Malia said, we have lots of opportunity, and Allie as well. We have lots of opportunity to continue to share and learn and shape this into something that is successful. Allie will share contact information with you on the screen so that if you have further questions about our budget, you know who to ask. Jean Straight, our Deputy Director, and Malia, is our Legislative and Government Affairs Coordinator. And you can learn more at our DSL website, which we have been in the process of upgrading. Boy, that work takes a long time to get it just right. And we're really pleased. Leanne O'Neill is our other public affairs specialist who's been working with us on that. And it's just turning out very nicely. But I guess I want to say that first and foremost, we're a public agency for Oregonians. We work for you. We take pride in protecting Oregon's natural resources, as well as the state's Common School Fund, to ensure a thriving Oregon and strong contributions to our public schools. I recall when I was in the legislature co-chairing the Ways and Means Subcommittee on Natural Resources, if anyone's cell phone went off in committee, they had to make a contribution to the Common School Fund. And that was my rule in every committee that I chaired in my entire time, 10 years in the legislature. We got a few bucks in there, but it wasn't my intent to raise money. It was my intent to show people that it was rude to have your phone ring when someone's giving testimony, because members of the public often don't know how to do that. They're scared out of their wits. My very first time testifying, before I ever knew I was going to be involved in the legislature, the chair was so kind to me and said, go ahead and pour yourself a little cup of water. And I did. And my hand was shaking so bad that the water was slopping out of the cup. So it was then, as a citizen, that I understood how scary it could be to testify in front of your legislators. And so I hope that as a committee chair, I was always kind to people, but and that was why I had them donate their fees for violating the rule to the Common School Fund. And that was something that everyone knew about. And they already got their checkbook out because I have good hearing. So it was a success. But I do want to thank you for joining us. I think I really enjoy working for this agency. I love this agency when it was in my budget portfolio. And I love it as the director. The people that work here are so dedicated to Oregon's natural resources. They're just a tremendous staff. They're very customer service oriented. And it's just been great. And our communications team and our legislative coordinator have been terrific at helping people understand the work that we do. Even better than they knew it before. And then we have people like Peggy who have been around and support our work, but also can be critical in areas that it's important to be critical. I don't want everybody to just love the agency. I want people to understand what we do, to offer constructive criticism that helps us do our work better. So that's what we're here for tonight. And I don't think Michelle's ever going to be on the enemies list. She might get on the cranky list, but you know, she's here to do a job as well. And so we appreciate our LFO and CFO analysts, and they're important to the work that we do so that we hone in on our skills. And Michelle knows very well about our problem with abandoned and derelict vessels and is really helping offer us some ideas to combat that issue. So again, thank you for joining us. I wish you a very pleasant evening wherever it takes you or wherever you are. You look like you're out in the sun, Victoria. I think that sun's going away in another day or two, but it'll be back. It'll be back again. So thank you so much. Appreciate your time. Good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.